Good afternoon and welcome to Live with Next Great Step. My name is Beth Hendler-Grun and I am the CEO and founder of Next Great Step, where our sole focus is to help college students and recent grads land the job that they deserve, especially right now in this really competitive market. We have helped here at Next Great Step, we have helped hundreds of grads to land the job. And I'm really excited today to have a guest with me on our live because there's a lot of things that need to be dealt with, especially when it comes to money. So our recent grads might have come out of school, but they may have debt and they may not be so sure about how to manage a budget or how to really build their credit. So I'm excited to welcome Kieran Lenahan. Kieran is a New Jersey-based entrepreneur, leadership coach, podcast host, and the founder of Lenahan Coaching. He works with young leaders, startup founders, and entrepreneurs, both current and aspiring, to increase self-awareness, improve decision-making, and overcome mindset hurdles that slow them down. More importantly, he coaches recent grads to learn the basic habits of money management and to set them up for financial success. Kieran speaks from his own experience on how he dealt with over $100,000 of debt and how he managed to get that down. So Kieran, I am so happy you're here. Hopefully you and your family are safe during this crazy time that we're in. You know, so many young people are not sure of their path forward. And not only are they trying to find a job, which I'm always helping to do, but how do you manage the money that you have and make decisions? So maybe tell us, like, what's the first thing that you would advise a recent grad on what to do when they get out of school? How should they prioritize their time, especially when it comes to managing money?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, thank you, Beth. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and really appreciate the opportunity to talk about a topic that I think is so important. And I think so many people can benefit from even just some really basic habits and principles. So happy to share things that I've learned throughout my own personal experience that I wasn't quite taught in school or college or anything like that. So
Awesome.
In terms of where to start, I think the first place that I always encourage people to start is to just get an understanding of your situation. And by that, I mean, if you have student loans, what does that actually look like? How much student loans do you have? What are the interest rates? And then from the side of understanding your income and your living expenses, the word budget is sometimes something that scares a lot of people, but I'm here to say it doesn't have to be scary. It can actually be really empowering and almost fun. And so the first step is really just understanding your picture. So what student loans do you have? What is your income, if you have it, and what are your living expenses? And from there, that already is, I think, a huge part of the battle to really understanding how to manage your money well.
Great point. Let me ask you this, do you find parents are forthcoming with their young adults about money, or do you feel that sometimes their eyes are just, they're not really aware of even how much is really at stake? I think it's even, I'll speak as a parent who has a son who's about to be a college senior. I think there's always this question of how much do you share? How much do you put on them? How much do you help take on? But also like explaining to them. So what do you see in terms of parents and that dynamic of what they tell their young adults?
Yeah, so I definitely see it all over the place across the board. I think a lot of it depends on how the parents grew up and how they were taught. We also live in a time where college tuition is not the same as it was back when my parents were college age. And so lots of things have changed. And so I think a lot of it oftentimes in what I see depends on how the parents grew up and what their relationship with money is, the extent to which they've gotten some education around how to manage money. I've been surprised at some of the basic things that even people my parents' age haven't learned and haven't been exposed to. So I think a lot of it depends on personal experience, but it's really all across the board is what I see. And then that gets, whatever it is, gets passed on to their kids.
Yeah. So what is it? What do you think people should understand that they don't, whether you're an adult or you have a recent grad? What do you think they should understand more?
Yeah. So in general, at a high level, three main things: understanding how to budget, managing debt, and then building credit. Those are three pretty foundational parts of a financial picture for a family, for a person. And so again, I think going back to that first step that I always encourage people to take is to just understand how much money are you bringing in and how much money is going out on a regular basis. Even like that in and of itself is, again, half the battle. I think if you can have a really good understanding of that, that puts you in a place to be able to make informed decisions about how you make changes to how you spend money or anything like that. So first step, again, is really just understand your income and your expenses.
Yeah, great point. And if you are a recent grad and you don't have a job yet, I'm guessing the income numbers could be quite low unless you're doing something part-time. And the expense number could be quite high for, the loans coming due and understanding what that means. Do you see that happen?
Yes, for sure. And that's oftentimes where I see a lot of people getting creative on how, if their income is either nothing or very little compared to their expenses, this is often a really formidable time to be establishing some good habits with just understanding, okay, I don't have income right now. What are some creative ways that I can limit my expenses? Obviously, I don't want to tell anybody you can't have fun and you don't go out and do things or spend money at all. But it's all about priorities, and it's about understanding, what is the future that you're working towards for yourself, for your future family, and what are those values that are really important to you. So a lot of recent graduates who have an income that's either nothing or very little, a lot of them are living at home or living with family members or living somewhere where they can reduce the rent and not pay thousands and thousands of dollars. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Because if you're not, especially if you have student loans, adding to financial stress, which can just be, I'll just say it for what it is, it can be a really huge stressor for families and especially for recent grads. My younger sister just graduated college in May and she has student loans. And I know, I've had conversations with her and understand the stress that it can cause, and then having gone through it myself as well. So, again, aligning with values and aligning with what are your financial goals? Where do you want to be a few years down the road? And then getting creative in terms of ways that you can reduce your expenses or increase your income, whether it's through finding a job or part-time, full-time, or starting a side hustle, which is a buzzword these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes, especially as I see, even whether it even comes to jobs or in terms of money aspirations, there's this disconnect I find sometimes in young adults between what it actually takes to get to where you want and where you are right now, and the effort that takes to to put into it. So and I'm sure even with money goals. So you kind of mentioned that, and I mentioned that in the beginning that when you came out of school that you had over $100,000 in debt, and that you have found a way actually very quickly to get out of it. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people about having all this debt, and how do you then get yourself out of it when you feel that you're not sure? It's a very daunting task.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and as I share this story, I want people to hear the message. The purpose of it is that there's hope and it's possible to pay it off. You don't have to live with it for your entire life. So like Beth said, I graduated with combined. So my now wife and I were dating in college. When we both graduated, we had a combined student loan debt of over $100,000. My wife studied speech therapy, so she actually went to graduate school after graduating undergrad, and I started working full time. And so we had that debt, and we looked at that number, and it scared us. It scared us a lot, and we knew that was something that we wanted to attack. It was something that we were on the same page about. And so we had conversations about, all right, how do we want to prioritize the way that we live to make sure that we can really be working this number down right from the start, so that, come 5-10 years down the road, we're not worried about having to pay back an amount of student loans that's continuing to grow because of interest.
Right. So what was the top thing that you did? I mean, what was, just kind of action, if someone's listening and say, hey, I have a lot of debt too, what are the top 3 actionable things that you did to really kind of, get that down?
Yeah. first and foremost, again, going back to where I tell people to start, we made a budget. So we just, very simple, nothing too crazy. You can use an Excel spreadsheet, you can use pen and paper, or there are lots of tools out there that you can just use to actually automate this. But what we did was just say how much money is coming in, how much money is going out for like the necessary living expenses. So we were paying rent at the time, we had utilities, we bought groceries, and we had internet and like some of the basic things. Then we understood, all right, what's the difference between our income and our expenses? And that's kind of the margin that we had to choose what to do with it. So we could choose to put a portion of that towards paying back our student loans. We could choose to spend some of that on going out, hanging out with friends, going on a vacation and things like that. We really, we definitely sacrificed. Again, I'm not saying that we didn't do things that were fun, but we got creative. You don't have to spend money to do things that are worthwhile and have fun. So we didn't go on international vacations for a few years, but we did go on family vacations. So we really simply, we made a budget. We just understood those two numbers, how much is coming in and how much is going out. And then we just decided this is the amount per month that we're going to pay off our student loans. So that would be the first step. Kind of along with that step, especially if you have student loans, is to understand how do you want to tackle it. So there are a few things in a few different directions that you can go with that. One, like I had a combination of private and federal student loans. So that interest rates they varied anywhere from between 3% to up to 9%, which is, as I think back to it, I'm like, that was insane. So what we did was prioritize the loans that had the highest interest rates and just did some pretty simple math to say, all right, which loan does it make sense to pay off first? And then we just, every month we would pay off that loan with the highest interest rate. And over time, we started to see those loans diminish. And then eventually we'd move on to the next one and to the next one. So we started a budget and we decided this is how much we're committing to paying off student loans. No, so that would be some of the first few places that I would start.
Yeah. One of the things, and I think we're in a world where there's this feeling of like, well, I deserve something, or I deserve this, and I want to have, we're in this world where everything's visual or on Instagram, or I want what all these other people have. And I think what you're talking about is also showing restraint and prioritization. That if you want to get what those people have, that you can't always have it at 21. As much as it might feel like everybody, the same way we say with jobs, people say, well, all my friends have these amazing jobs and I'm the only one. And the truth is, I'm like, it's probably not what you think. And I'm not saying they don't have great jobs. It's just nothing is always what it seems. And what people have doesn't make it that it was easy to get there. They didn't snap their fingers and it just like came to them. There was either effort behind it or there's effort to maintain that. And I think what you also talk about too is this, you have to show some restraint and you have to say, well, maybe I can't have that Starbucks every day. And, I don't know, maybe it's in a good time that we're in a pandemic. There's maybe a little bit less travel going on. Maybe you don't feel quite so bad that you're not able to go places, but you can't just like push the money elsewhere. I think just that prioritization is so important, and also how you make decisions. And I think it kind of lends to another question that gets asked of me a lot, and I'll ask it of you, is a lot of grads will say to me, should I take the first job that comes along? I know I need to make money. I know I need to start paying off my loan, or just I want to be financially independent. I may not want to live with my parents. Should I just take any job? Or should I be more strategic? How would you answer that? I know my answer, I could weigh in, but I want to know, how do you answer that question when people are looking to make decisions about how to make money?
Yeah, I've been asked that question numerous times. And so I'll be honest, I don't think it's a cop-out. I think, oftentimes there isn't just a single right answer. It's not yes, do this, or no, do that. I think for each person's individual circumstance, I think there are factors at play that can cause them to want to lean one way or the other. But it depends. It depends. That's, I guess, really my answer would be that it depends on, again, how do you weigh those different priorities that you have? Being independent and moving out of your parents' house. If that's something that's super important to you and getting just your foot in the door somewhere and getting your career started, maybe that's the direction you want to go. if you have something really specific in mind that you do want to do, and you think that there's a good chance that, if you're patient, that you can, take that step, maybe that's the right direction. But it's a really tough question, and I know a lot of people are wrestling with it. But I think one of the mindsets that when I've talked to people that I found helpful to just share, we often have this either or mindset where there's a right decision and there's a wrong decision, and I don't want to make the wrong decision, so I'm kind of paralyzed. Oftentimes what I share with people is that either direction you go, if you go with an open mind and open attitude and you make the most out of whichever decision you make, you will turn it into a good decision and you will find your path along that journey. It's not just a singular point in time decision that determines your direction. It's a series of decisions over time. So there isn't necessarily a wrong direction. Is something that I'd love to just share with people, because I know for myself, like I've been through that, and I go through, like, you feel guilty, and you feel fear. I don't want to make the wrong decision.
Right.
But if you know, okay, whichever decision I make, I know that I can make the most of it, and I know that I can, be myself. I can take advantage of it to its fullest extent, and you can turn anything into an opportunity. So that's kind of how I'd answer it.
That's a great answer. And I'll weigh in on my answer. So first of all, I totally resonate with that fear, and that I'll call it like paralysis analysis, where you just continually overanalyze and then nothing happens. So that's what the job search in general, I find most young people are so worried about doing the wrong thing, or they just do nothing. And that's not great. But my philosophy is similar to yours. I agree. You have to understand, what are your money requirements? Can you afford to wait or hold out for something that's really in the area that you want? And maybe you need to do a side hustle. Maybe you just need to deliver food for a little bit, or a part-time job just to cover your basic expenses. So I agree with you. It doesn't have to be either or. What I like to say is you really want to think about also, what are your skills? What are your core skills that you have? Are you great at research? Are you really an awesome writer? Can you sell? Do you have sales ability? And if you think about where you can take your skills and put them into an opportunity, I think that's what you want to find. It may not have to be exactly what you had in mind. I do think we're in a time right now where people may need to be more flexible. Maybe you want to do something in a similar field. It doesn't have to be the initial field that you had the intention of, because maybe it's not doing as well. So you really want to be flexible. And then also think about, I love what you said about making the best of it. No matter what you do, how can I maximize and learn something new in what I chose? So maybe I thought I was going to go into sales, but maybe they're teaching me now how to do more digital marketing and copywriting. And you know what? That's actually another skill set that you can add to your toolbox as you progress. So maybe the job isn't what you thought, or wasn't the direction you thought you were going in, but long as you have an understanding of the skills you have and what you can acquire over time, that's what's valuable. And if it can help you make money and get to that point, that's something that's really valuable. Something that we actually just launched this program called the Skills Accelerator Method, because we want to help you and help young people figure out, what are my core skills? How do I explain them? How do I find jobs that align to it? So I thought that was it's hard, but I think absolutely you have to assess your situation, but don't stop. Don't be paralyzed. Do something. Yeah.
Agreed. It's a great perspective.
Yeah. This is really,
I'd love to echo one thing that you called out before we were talking about that question specifically. One was about the, this kind of comparison, and I think social media plays a big part in it. I'm not saying social media is awful and everybody should get off of it. I think it can be used for a lot of good, but you were sharing about how, we see other people's, essentially it's a highlight reel, right? You see all the mountaintop experiences, all the positive things, but you don't see, one, the work that goes into it. You also don't see the struggles that people experience. Right. Everybody struggles with things. Right. And so if we let comparison to other people drive our decision-making when it comes to spending money on things, I'm just going to be honest, it's not a recipe for success. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, one of the basic principles or basic habits, as I talked about, understanding your expenses and understanding your income, it's about spending less money than you make, or not spending money that you don't have.
Right.
There's a funny phrase, I can't remember if I'll get it correctly, but it's people spend money on things that they don't need to impress people that they don't like, and buy things. It's like something along those lines.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I just wanted to echo that because I think it's a really important point.
Yeah, I get it. And it's hard. We live in a society that's materialistic, and people sometimes measure their success by things. And I think sometimes it takes a little bit to be older and more experienced, or to be through some of these experiences. It doesn't always mean everything, but it's hard when you're young and we live in this very visual, instant gratification kind of world.
Yeah.
That I want the job now, I want the money now, I want the thing now, and without the patience and the effort. So yeah, absolutely. You said before, that we talked about earlier, that there's 3 different reactions that people have when they graduate with a loan or debt. What are their typical reactions that you see people deal with?
Yeah, and it's funny because as I think about the 3 reactions, I think I found myself having all 3 of them, just at different points. So the first reaction is just kind of blissful ignorance, or just blindness, and just not understanding. And sometimes it's not our fault. Like I think back to when I graduated school, the concept of $100,000, it sounds like a big number, but I don't really know what that means, because I haven't worked a full-time job. I know it's a big number. So I think the first reaction people tend to have is, or one reaction they tend to have is, okay, like I don't really get it. I don't understand the gravity of it. I don't understand what that actually means. And if you stay in that space, it can be dangerous, because if you don't understand, how important it is, it can over time really turn into something that causes a lot of stress.
Yeah.
The second type of reaction is to freak out and feel hopeless, and feel anxious. And it's really easy to say, oh, like don't worry about it. Don't get anxiety about it. It's okay. But I think it's okay to process, like, yes, okay, maybe this is something that is a little bit stressful. So it's okay to be in that space for a little bit. But again, I think staying there and feeling hopeless is not going to lead to the type of actions that you need to get out of it.
Right.
And then the third reaction is to kind of roll up your sleeves and develop a plan and get going. And so that's ultimately, regardless of which direction you go at first, that's where you want to land, because you want to be focused on how can you move forward and how can you take action.
Yeah.
And so those are 3 of the common responses that you see from people.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it starts to become into like, do you understand taxes? So even if you got a job that was $100,000, do you realize how much money gets taken out for taxes and other, so just even that, like that money is not the amount that you think it is, no matter what and how many years it takes. So yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate you sharing that. And it's tough. We have a couple of questions, so I want to ask them, and you can weigh in. So Ash Grands says, as a student or recent grad, what are some of the best ways you can invest for your future with little capital? So kind of a question more about on the investing side.
Yeah. So I'd say, and I will preface this with the fact that I am not a financial advisor, and I'm not qualified to give investment advice. But in general, I think I can give a relatively good answer. So what we've been talking about in terms of student loans, a lot of that is, I would consider defense. If you think about it in terms of a sports analogy, you're digging out of, a financial hole. Investing is about playing a little bit of offense and using your money to work for you, as opposed to your student loans getting bigger because you owe the banks more money.
Right.
So in general, the advice that I would give is to, again, set aside money. So from that budget that you have, if you're dedicating money to student loans, or if you don't have student loans, dedicate money that you want to use to investing. And there are a lot of ways that you can, through either apps you can use, or mutual funds tend to be a really common kind of first step into the investing space. And that's generally the direction I'd probably have people go. But again, I'm not a financial professional technically.
No, good advice. And we have another question. It says, can you weigh in on the importance of building credit or getting a credit card right after graduation?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when we think about the three, I think, main habits that I know you and I wanted to talk about today, building a budget, understanding your student loan picture, and building a plan to pay it off. Building credit is, I think, a huge part of that, and it definitely fits into those other two habits. So I love the question. I actually think building credit can even be a process that starts before graduating college. It's something that I wish I did. I didn't have a credit card until after I graduated. But I think a lot of students don't actually know what building credit means or why it's important at all. So I can give a quick explanation and then get into just some ways to do it in a way that makes sense. So a credit score, so everybody is assigned a credit score, which essentially is a number for the banks to know how credible or how trustworthy is this person if I were to loan them money. So a credit card, the simple way to explain it is you spend money that comes out of a bank's account, and then eventually you pay it back. So if the bank is going to give you that money to lend to you in that short period of time, they want to know that you're going to be paying them back. Otherwise, they're going to lose out on money.
Right.
So the score is, as your credit score increases, the more trustworthy you are. So it's really important because when you go to buy a house or you go to buy a car or take out a small business loan, your credit score is something that all of these financial institutions are looking at to know, okay, do I actually want to loan this person the money? And so if you don't have credit or you have poor credit, it can impact your ability to get a small business loan, to get a business off the ground, and things like that. So in terms of the importance of it, super important for those reasons. In terms of how to do it, the number one advice that I can give is don't spend money that you don't have. So a credit card is different than a debit card because a debit card is just your bank account. Like you're spending your money. If you approach a credit card and using a credit card as if it were a debit card, that's the best way to approach it, because you're never going to spend money that you don't have. And when you pay your bills on time and you do that continuously, your credit score goes up because you're showing, hey, I'm good for the money. Like I'm going to pay you back. And so your credit score will continue to increase. And again, and this is even if all you use it for is groceries. Again, it's data that they have to know this person will pay the money back. So use it like a debit card and always pay it back.
Yeah. Yeah. And the question is, do you need more than one? Does it matter if you need more than one credit card?
Great question. So I would say you don't need more than one. But I think over time, so the general advice that I would give is start with one. If you apply for too many credit cards within a small window of time, so within like less than 6 months, that kind of signals to banks like, uh-oh, this person might be in some kind of financial distress, which will actually be a detriment to your credit score. So if you space it out and every year or so for the first few years after graduating and apply for those credit cards, that's going to allow you to build your credit score even more, because there are a handful of factors that go into the credit score. Paying your bills on time is one of them, but also just the total amount of a credit line that you have is a factor. So if you have more credit cards, your credit line will increase.
Yep, absolutely. And I'll share advice just as a parent of a college student. I'll tell you just what we did. And that was advised to us also by a financial advisor, is that I got my son a credit card when he started college, but it had to be joint with us because he could not get one on his own. He didn't have enough credit. But what that does is, he tells us what he's buying on it, and we ensure that the bill is paid. The accountability is on the parent, but it does set him up so when he graduates to get a card on his own, his track record is kind of meshed with ours, that it shows good payment. So it sets your young adult up to get a credit card on their own because they already now have some good credit that they've started with. Or as a parent, if you could help them along the way, so if they have to still pay the bill or pay you to reimburse what they've spent, but it's a nice way to help them at least be able to start on a credit standpoint. So yeah, I think as early as possible to have, as long as you know your child's responsible and they're going to pay for it, which is a key piece of puzzle, but I think it's really important, along with, a bank account, debit card, just managing that or setting limits on it if you don't think they're ready to spend a lot of money. But all of that, I think, is any lesson we're teaching them how to look at what they have, look at what they're spending, what's coming in and what's going out, I think is a valuable lesson.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of, so say you're a recent graduate, you got your first credit card, you intend to just use it as a debit card so you can build your credit score. A really easy way to make sure that you don't forget to pay the bill and end up accruing interest. So just like student loans have interest rates, credit cards also have interest rates if you don't pay your bill. The difference is that credit card interest rates are 2 to 3 times higher. And so lots of people can get into a situation where they have a ton of credit card debt, and credit card debt is harder to dig out of than student loans because the interest rate is higher. So again, if you use it like a debit card, you can avoid that and make sure you just always pay it off. But all credit cards have an option to automate it and just make an automatic payment to pay down the bill. And so if you know that you are not spending more money than you have, you can guarantee that you will pay off the bill and guarantee that your credit score will continue to increase and you'll become more trustworthy.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. So let me ask just a few more questions. So kind of as you've been advising entrepreneurs, young people, grads, maybe just you can reflect for yourself, what do you see as for yourself, maybe the biggest mistake you've made or biggest failure that you had as you were launching into your own career, that kind of, if you were to share lessons learned, what would that be?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm trying to think mistakes. There's so many, but in a good way. I think it's really easy to look back at things and be like, wow, I can't believe I did that. But at the time, obviously it seemed like a good idea. But when it comes to career, I think the mistake that I made early on was really getting away from networking. Again, another buzzword, and I kind of want to explain about what does that actually mean. All it means is truly building relationships with people. So the organization that I worked for right after graduating was about 3,000 employees, and a lot of my time was just spent focused on just like learning my job and doing it well, which makes sense. But I didn't spend as much time really branching out to just get to know people around the organization. And I think for me, even more importantly, as I look back, outside of the organization. I didn't have anything built into my job where I was interacting with people outside of the company. But as you just meet people who work in different industries at different companies, you can really expand, one, your knowledge of what's out there and what's available and what other people are doing. Because I thought, like, having one job, I was like, oh, this is what it looks like to work full time in a corporate job. But every company has a different culture. There's so many different ways to approach making a living. And so the more that you get to know other people's experiences, the more that you'll personally know and you'll learn about yourself and what you want. But when it comes time to make that next career move, when it comes time to find another job, you now have people at those organizations that you can reach out to and say, hey, I'd love to learn more about, what opportunities are available. And you have a foot in the door, as opposed to where I found myself was I didn't have that many people in outside organizations when it came time for me to look elsewhere. I was really just applying to jobs blindly, which that's a whole nother conversation, but it wasn't an effective strategy to just apply blindly online to jobs without having relationships with people in those organizations. So I think for me, when I look back at biggest mistake or something that I would change about how I approach things would be to more intentionally just reach out to people on LinkedIn and just talk for 20 to 30 minutes and hear about what it is that they do. It's a really, it can be a really just innocent learning experience, and people love to talk about themselves. They love to share about themselves and what they do. So, it can be mutually beneficial, even if you're not actively looking for a job right now.
Yeah, I love that advice. It's very in sync with what I tell our clients and students and young grads, is that networking, it's not just even getting your first job, it's the next job, or it's learning about what's out there. And no matter how much you do research online or Google information, there's nothing like talking to the person themselves who who do it. And there's so much out there. So I think that's such great advice about networking, and it doesn't have to be difficult. And I think especially too, when you even get to the job, of understanding like who's around you and what other departments are there and what do they do. I agree. People love to talk about themselves, even if you show like genuine curiosity, as opposed to saying, hey, I really need a job or I need my next job. That's not a great way to approach it. But if you just say, I'm really curious about what you do, I'd love to learn more. Can you share advice? Could you be a mentor to me? It's just such an unbelievable way to really help you progress in your career. So I think that's such spot on advice. I think that's really, really great. So I think this has been so helpful. I want to make sure that who's watching and listening can learn more. So Kieran, if people were to learn more about what you do and guiding young people, how can they find out about that?
Absolutely. So best place to go would be to go to my website, which is Lenahan, so my last name, coaching.com. And connect with me there. There's a page to contact me. If you want to learn more about personal finance coaching or just the work that I do with leaders and entrepreneurs who are kind of getting started, that would be the first place to go. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on there pretty often and love to just meet new people and hear about what they're up to and how I might be able to help them.
Awesome. Fantastic. I think this has been so helpful. We have so many young people who not only need advice about getting a job, but how to manage their money and be really smart about it. And I think you talked about it in such a simple way to really take advantage of that. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you to everyone else who was joining today. Also, again, I'm Beth with Next Great Step, and we help college students and recent grads land the job that they deserve. And if you have questions about how we guide recent grads to land the job, to pay off their loans, you can contact us at nextgreatstep.com, or please connect with me on LinkedIn. Hope everyone has a great day.